Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Kristen Welker. We begin with breaking news, a major development in the nationwide redistricting arms race and the fight for control of Congress, with the midterms less than 6 months away. Today, Republicans getting a big boost in their effort to keep the majority, even as the party is facing significant political headwinds from the economy, the war with Iran, and a deeply unpopular president. The Virginia Supreme Court today siding with Republicans, striking down the Democratic-drawn congressional map, which voters narrowly approved last month. The court ruled that the ballot measure about the new map, which would have given Democrats up to 4 more House seats, violated the state's constitution. It's a blow for Democrats across the country who've struggled to counter the redistricting blitz from Republicans. Right now, Republicans are on track to gain as many as 14 seats just from redistricting in the 2026 midterms, compared to just 6 for Democrats. The partisan battle lines on full display today, with Democratic House Leader Hakeem Jeffries saying his party is exploring all options to overturn this shocking decision. And Republican Speaker of the House Mike Johnson celebrating, saying the court's ruling was a victory for democracy. It comes after yesterday, Tennessee Republicans approved a new congressional map eliminating that state's single Democratic congressional district, slicing up the only majority black district in the state. Protests erupted inside and outside the state capitol, with State House Democrats walking out of the chamber and some joining protesters in shaming lawmakers as they left. Take a listen. Now, Tennessee is the first state to redraw its map following last week's landmark Supreme Court ruling, which effectively eliminated the racial gerrymandering protections from the Voting Rights Act. 2 lawsuits have been filed challenging the map, including by the NAACP, which called the Tennessee vote, quote, a direct attack on our democracy and our Constitution to dismantle majority black districts. That sentiment was echoed by Tennessee Democratic state lawmakers.
It's easy to say that it's about politics. It's very, very evident. It's very, very clear, and they know it, and we all know it, that this is about race. This is about trying to dilute the black vote, and they're doing it by splitting us into 3 separate congressional districts.
It's disgraceful. They should be ashamed, but sadly, they have no shame.
Meanwhile, Florida, where the governor signed a new map into law earlier this week, which likely halves the number of Democratic districts, also faces a lawsuit alleging the new map is a violation of its state constitution. Joining me now from the White House is our chief Capitol Hill correspondent and longtime Virginia reporter, Ryan Nobles. Also with me is NBC News senior reporter Jane Timm, who covers voting policies and election administration. Thanks to both of you for starting us off. Ryan, I want to start with you on your expertise about Virginia politics. Republicans celebrating the ruling, but considering the political headwinds facing the party, is it still possible Democrats come out better than those 6 seats?
Yeah, I think that in the grand scheme of things, this is a huge setback for Democrats across the country. But the impact it'll have on Virginia specifically, I still think remains an open question. The map as it currently exists, which looks more and more like it will be the map that voters are working from in the fall election, probably still gives Democrats the possibility of netting 2 seats. Just based on where the political headwinds are heading in this direction. There's 2 seats that often go back and forth in Virginia, and Democrats feel confident about that. So they would have had the opportunity of gaining an additional 4 seats beyond that if this map had gone into effect. So there's no doubt that this is a big blow for Democrats in their effort to stem this redistricting charge that Republicans have been very successful on across the state. But there really is no remedy for Democrats here. The Virginia Supreme Court has the final say when it comes to this particular issue, particularly because it was attempted to be pushed through a constitutional referendum, which the Virginia voters did support, albeit not by as wide a margin as Democrats initially had thought they had. And we see Republicans in the state and beyond the president's political apparatus basically taking a victory lap, arguing that they chose not to invest the millions, tens of millions of dollars that Virginia Democrats and national Democrats decided to invest in this primarily because they thought they would win at this stage, that the Virginia Supreme Court would interpret the law as they saw it. So there's no doubt that Republicans feel very good about the way this outcome came in their favor. But that does not in any way, shape or form negate the overall political headwinds that they're facing in their efforts to hold on to the majority in this election cycle, Kristen.
Well, let's delve more deeply into exactly what you are hearing at the White House. That is where you are posted today. What is President Trump saying about this Virginia decision?
Well, as you might imagine, the president is taking a major victory lap. He posted on his social media channel today, huge win for the Republican Party and America in Virginia. The Virginia Supreme Court has just struck down the Democrats' horrible gerrymander, Make America Great Again. Of course, for some reason in Virginia, it's a horrible gerrymander, but in all these other states where Republicans have pushed through new maps, somehow that's good for democracy, according to Republicans. And you laid out quite eloquently all the different places where Republicans have just upended their maps to make things easier for Republicans to gain back seats. There's a lot packed into this issue. And, we spent a lot of time analyzing the maps based on the prior performance of political parties in these different states. But at the end of the day, it's still the voters that will have the final say on this. And the Democrats that I've talked to do feel buoyed by the political headwinds being at their backs. Yes, this makes that process more difficult, but they also point to the fact that if you redistrict these different districts across the country, you have to pull Republican voters out of Republican safe seats and put them in to Democrat-held seats. That dilutes the ability of Republicans to hold on to the seats that in the past were easy wins. And most Democrats believe that any seat that was within a plus 13 margin in the 2024 election is within their grasps in the 2026 election. And so that puts a whole lot more seats in play because they've done so much redistricting around the country. So this is going to be a nail biter right down to the very end, Kristen. But it's certainly not a good day for Democrats, but they have by no means backed away their hopes of winning back the majority in the fall.
Yeah, it's a good way to characterize it, a nail-biter indeed. Ryan, I've been getting a lot of texts from Republican sources who seem to feel bullish in the wake of all of this. What are you hearing from folks on Capitol Hill and leadership in particular?
Well, I think what it's going to do is double down Democratic efforts to try and find blue seats in other states. And you see Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, talking about looking at the maps in places like New York and other Northeast states that perhaps they'd have an opportunity to rejigger their maps. But here's the thing, Kristen. The time is running out. The clock is ticking. It's very unlikely that the Democrats are going to be able to find any more seats in this election cycle. We might be talking about election cycles in the future. And the one thing I will say is, regardless of what political hat you wear, the fact that we are building more and more congressional districts that are hard right and hard left is going to make it immensely more difficult to find any sort of bipartisan consensus on Capitol Hill. If you read between the lines there, these shutdowns that keep happening over and over and over again, if you're sending back hard partisans to Capitol Hill, shutdowns are just going to keep happening with even more frequency as a result of it.
Yeah, that big picture perspective, so important in terms of what we're watching. Ryan Nobles, thank you so much from the White House. Jane Timm, let me turn to you. You have been tracking every twist and turn of this. We highlighted the math as it stands right now, where Republicans do have an edge, but there are other states, as Ryan was just talking about. What are you watching and where are you watching right now?
Yeah, Kristen, Alabama lawmakers just passed a bill moments ago that actually makes it possible for the state to run certain special primaries again. So if they can change their maps, if the courts allowed them to go back to one of their previously enacted maps based on this precedent from Calais, they're going to run another election in those specific districts, the affected congressional districts and affected state Senate districts, and then use those results to go forward into November. An extraordinary remedy in an attempt to use a map with one less black congressional district than the one that they currently have on the books today. Their primary is scheduled for May 19th, and they say as long as they can get it done by August, they'll run a second one just for those specific affected areas to use this new map. But other states are also we're watching. Louisiana, South Carolina, Tennessee yesterday passed a map that carves up the Memphis seat, as you said, into 3 different districts that spread hundreds of miles. But next, I think Louisiana is going to be the one that we're watching next week, and Alabama, of course, too.
It's just extraordinary. What's also extraordinary is that President Trump earlier this week called for states who already held primaries to redraw their maps. Is that possible, Jane? What are you hearing?
I mean, you can rerun an election if you want to, but of course, these things are not free. It is not free to redo an election. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. I mean, that special election in Virginia was appropriated, I think, $5 million to run an election, which now the results are no longer in place. So it's much more unlikely that people are going to redo an election. But I think what you see in Alabama is just how far Republican states are willing to go to eke out a partisan advantage here. I mean, this is the redistricting game the White House saw and have made clear that they really want to eke out going into midterms, where the minority party is already set up for success just based on the historical trends that we know. And so far this year have been running really far in advance.
Jane, I think one of the big questions that people have is, could this push to redistrict, which did start with President Trump in Texas, could it actually backfire in some states?
You know, I think that it does have an impact on how people see their democracy. I mean, the idea that you could have a second election once you get the maps you like is definitely going to affect people. When you ask people of both parties, what do you think about gerrymandering? Most people don't like it. They still want to win, though. So there's a back and forth here where people can put aside partisan gain because they want to win, like we saw with Virginia voters in that special election, saying they're willing to gerrymander. But as you saw, it wasn't the same margins that Democrats have been enjoying recently in Virginia. So people definitely don't like the idea of gerrymandering. And I think the more you do it, the more people are going to get sick of it.
Jane, Timm, you have been all over this from the very beginning. We really appreciate your joining us with your insights and great reporting today. Joining me now is Justin Levitt, professor of law at Loyola Marymount University. Professor Levitt, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
A pleasure.
So let's start off with the news of the day. What is your reaction to today's ruling by the Virginia Supreme Court?
I think it's disappointing that the Virginia Supreme Court chose to overrule the will of the voters by such a narrow margin. It's particularly disappointing to see them do it with a lecture to Virginia voters without the national context in mind. But this was always a risk, coming back months with trying to redo the lines in this particular way.
Well, and Leader Jeffries says Democrats are now exploring all of their options to get it overturned. I think a lot of people are curious about what that means. Could that include appealing the decision all the way to the Supreme Court?
I think that's unlikely. So this decision was based on the state constitution of Virginia, which has some particular requirements for changing the rules. That's going to be very tough to overturn. I think there are a lot of other options around the country, even if not in Virginia. And I have no doubt that Democrats are looking to explore all of them.
Well, how willing do you, so you don't think that the Supreme Court would actually engage in a ruling by a lower court is effectively what you're saying?
On this particular topic, on the Virginia state constitution, that's going to be a really tough road. The Supreme Court will engage if there's a federal constitutional problem. But really here, what the Virginia Supreme Court said was that the state constitution says you got to go about the process of a constitutional amendment in certain ways. And usually the courts leave that to each state to determine.
Well, and of course, there was the Supreme Court ruling last week that dealt with gerrymandering, and I wonder how you see the implications of that. Has that effectively supercharged the gerrymandering battle?
Yeah, it absolutely has. The U.S. Supreme Court deserves an enormous amount of the blame for what we're watching around the country right now, which is some of the worst anti-democratic behavior in the modern era. Voters, by the way, hate this across the board. Voters have overwhelmingly put their thumb on the scale for fair maps. And the Supreme Court, first in 2019, and then again just a few days ago, supercharged bad behavior by state politicians that we're watching all over the country.
You go so far as to call this anti-democratic behavior. For folks who are watching it might not understand exactly why it deserves that categorization. What exactly do you mean by that?
So we have a commitment in this country, or pretend we do, to letting voters pick their representatives. What you're watching now across the country is an attempt by incumbents to shore up themselves and their friends by picking their voters rather than having the voters pick the politicians. I'll say that the redistricting, gerrymandering wars of the moment are a little bit like putting up a seawall. They're meant to stem opposition party gains in normal times based on keeping out the tides. A tsunami of turnout comes right over top of that seawall. So you're watching some very bad behavior leaning against the voters, but the voters are still in charge here. And if there's a real wave this fall, they could well overcome the biased, tilted, unfair results of a map or two.
Let me ask you, broadly speaking, about what else we're seeing. There are court challenges right now to the redistricting maps in Florida, in Tennessee, arguing that those maps violate the state's constitutions. What do you make of what we might see happen in those states?
I think Florida is really close to watch. So the voters passed a bill in Florida, passed a constitutional amendment in Florida 16 years ago to say no partisan gerrymandering. And it's really hard to look at what Florida has done this week and say that they're not violating their own state's constitution. I think a lot of eyes are going to be on the courts in Florida to see whether they uphold what the law really says should be the case. Same is true in Louisiana, where the governor purported to stop an election currently in progress, and the state constitution seems to say you can't do that. There are other questions in places like Tennessee, as you've noted, in Alabama, which is indicating that it might be joining this train, but an awful lot of litigation still to come. There are more than 50 cases right now in the courts, and about 275 have been filed since the start of the decade. That's a lot of action in the courts to try and set up really what should be controlled by the public.
Well, we will be watching it very closely, as I know you will be as well. Professor Justin Levitt, thank you so much for bringing us your expertise today. We really appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
And joining me now on set is Kristen Clarke, General Counsel for the NAACP. Thank you so much for being here on a significant day. And I want to start with the big picture question of this. The NAACP is, of course, suing Tennessee over its new map. You've argued the Republican redistricting effort violates the state's constitution. But just to go to that broader look here, as we noted, this is a part of the fallout from the Supreme Court's decision on the Voting Rights Act, which the NAACP responded in this way. I'm going to read part of your statement. You wrote, quote, "We are witnessing the full machinery of government, aided by the court, disenfranchising and silencing Black America and hijacking democracy as we know it." The mission of the NAACP, of course, is to protect voting rights, to protect the rights of minorities to have their voices heard. Do you feel like in this moment the NAACP is losing that battle?
No. It is a moment, a dark moment in American democracy, but for over 100 years, the NAACP, as the nation's oldest and largest civil rights organization, has always worked to bend that arc towards justice. And right now, we are being pressure tested. And it's why we are looking to the courts. It is why we are showing up at state houses. It is why we are showing up in the streets to really sound an alarm. The dam has broken. Devastating decision by the United States Supreme Court. But this is a moment where we have to do everything possible to stand up for American democracy.
I want to read you a little bit of what the Supreme Court had to say in its ruling. Justice Samuel Alito writing, quote, "The vast social change has occurred throughout the country, and particularly in the South, which have made great strides in ending entrenched racial discrimination." What do you make of that argument by Justice Alito that effectively there has been enough societal change that this ruling was acceptable, that what was necessary in 1965, for example, is not necessary today?
It is an aspirational statement at best. You know, Justice Roberts doesn't have the lived experience of what it is like to be a Black person or a person of color in this country, one in which we have seen tremendous progress, but where we know that the guardrails were holding as a result of civil rights laws like the Voting Rights Act. You take that away and we see the entire thing fall apart. We're seeing democracy literally fall apart, before our very eyes. In just a week since the court has issued this ruling, we have seen states racing at lightning speed to strip away electoral opportunity from Black voters and voters of color. So to me, everything that we are witnessing right now makes clear that Justice Roberts' observation about where we are as a country doesn't hold.
And as we said at the top, you are in fact suing the state of Tennessee for its newly redrawn map. I want to play a little bit of what a state senator had to say defending this new map and then get your reaction on the other side. Take a look.
The maps were drawn to maximize the potential Republican partisan advantage by winning and having a chance and opportunity to win all 9 congressional districts for the Republican Party.
So the argument he's making, this has nothing to do with race. He's acknowledging it's a purely political move. What do you make of what you just heard there?
Well, Justice Alito it has given a playbook to lawmakers. Just call it partisanship, say the word over and over and over again. But we know that that is just a veneer. What happened in Tennessee was the intentional, purposeful dismantling of one district that provides Black voters an opportunity to have voice in Congress. A district that is home to Memphis, which holds a special place in our country. It is the place where Dr. King gave his life, where he was assassinated for fighting for a better America, fighting for the Voting Rights Act, standing up for the powerless. I find that lawmaker's statement lacks credibility, and it is why we will see a lot of litigation this cycle. The base claims that this is all partisanship just will not hold.
Are you planning to take this fight all the way to the Supreme Court?
We plan to fight back in the courts. What we are seeing in the South right now is very racial and dark, and it represents the lowest ideals of our democracy.
And quickly, before I let you go, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says all options are on the table to fight back. Some Democrats, Congressman Gregory Meeks, for example, in New York, says Democrats should use this new ruling of the Supreme Court to redraw maps in northern states where Democrats may have an advantage. What do you make of that strategy? Do you think that this tit-for-tat battle over redistricting should continue if that's what it takes by Democrats?
There is a very tit-for-tat battle, but as the NAACP, we will always stand up for Black voters and for the voiceless in our country and focus on the ways in which we are seeing this ugly gerrymandering war disenfranchising Black voters in this moment.
Kristen Clarke, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your perspective in this moment. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.